Have you ever felt like nothing truly makes you happy? You look forward to things, sure. A night out with friends, a special vacation, even time with a loved one. But afterwards, you feel empty, like you're just right back where you started. Never truly satisfied, but you can't quite pinpoint what's missing. We're going to explore why this is and how to overcome it, but just a warning to you, what we'll be talking about is gonna get very real. It'll make you question a lot about your life and force you to confront some hard choices. So only continue watching if you're truly ready to change your life. 10 years ago, as I struggled financially while publishing a peer-reviewed book on value theory, which addressed the concept of happiness, I never realized how my own journey would bring these concepts full circle. What's really got me thinking more about this in recent years has been the realization of how quickly time seems to pass by. It seems like the past 4 or 5 years have just gone by so quickly, and it's forced me to think about how I'm really using my time, how that time is limited, how one day everyone and everything I love will be gone, and how someday I'll be gone too. What I just said are things that often dance on the edge of our mind. We don't want to say them out loud or even think about them because of the anxiety we think they'll produce. Time is ticking. Time is running out. But actually, the passage of time is a blessing we miss only because we don't stop to cherish it. Too busy focused on simply surviving, we disengage one of the most miraculous phenomena that has ever existed, our human brain. From 2013 to 2018, when I was completely broke, when I could barely pay my rent and often didn't know where my next meal was coming from, when I was borrowing from friends and family knowing I couldn't pay them back, I did the same thing to my own brain. My idea of a solid financial plan was organizing all the pennies, nickels, and dimes I had to go buy a dollar dumpling at the corner store. When we're in survival mode, we tend to do this a lot. This most miraculous organ ceases to have the function it's most suited and adapted for. During those times, there's only one thing you dream of: not struggling, not being broke, having enough food, having enough shelter, being secure. And sometimes you even dream bigger than that. You dream about being rich, you dream about yachts, vacations, cars, mansions. You dream about everything that you've been taught will make your life better. Well, for me, the time eventually came. I went from scraping by making $13.25 per hour to making $17 per hour and feeling almost in disbelief that I could earn that much. $17 then became $60, $60 became $100, and $100 per hour became $150 per hour and beyond. Okay, so let me be clear about something. Money is important. I don't want to be one of those people who says, well, money isn't everything, because money does give you security. Money does give you peace of mind. Money does give you the foundation for well-being. In fact, among the list of identity statements or affirmations I read to myself every morning is the statement, I am rich. I always do things the rich way because I know what it's like to do things the poor way. And what I mean by this is simple. It's a statement to myself, having come from a place of thinking I didn't deserve it, that I do deserve it, that I value it, because everyone deserves it. You deserve it. But you see, this is where we begin to make a fatal mistake. When I started to have real disposable income and didn't care so much about the price tag at dinner or on vacation or in my daily life, it became easy to overeat and become fat. It became easy to drink a beer or 2 or 3 every night to relax. It became easy to buy nice clothing as a status symbol or buy extra toys here and there. But then I woke up one day and found myself living on repeat again and again and again. Each day was the same. Each sip of beer or wine or bite of food was dull. Each new purchase would become boring after a while. Each new get-together or party with friends felt meaningless. You see, there's a concept in psychology called the Hedonic Treadmill. And no, it's not the kind of treadmill that actually improves your health. As we seek pleasure or happiness, we start at a baseline. When we go from being broke to having financial stability, our happiness increases a lot. And so we start running on that treadmill faster and faster. But although every further increase in our income does increase our happiness, it takes more and more and more each time to achieve a smaller and smaller and smaller increase in our happiness, until we eventually realize we've just been running in place. Sound familiar? It's similar to how addiction works, needing more and more and more, not to actually feel good, but simply simply in order to feel normal, which raises an important question. If this is how happiness works, then is happiness even worth pursuing? Well, I woke up one day and started paging back through that book I published, thinking back to all the hard labor of love I engaged in to research, annotate, analyze, write, and submit it for review. During my years focused on building my business, I totally took my focus off of these intellectual pursuits. This doesn't make money was the thought I had continuously thought to myself. This isn't relevant to my business was the reason I gave myself for essentially abandoning engaging in this field for so long. But the more experiences I had and the more I reflected on what I had written all those years ago, the more I realized I was engaging in what psychologists call mimetic desire. You see, in decision theory, there's an idea called the random utility model. Imagine you go into an ice cream shop full of choices. You always thought you loved chocolate the best, but suddenly you see someone enjoying strawberry cheesecake ice cream, and now you're not so sure. You see, up until the 60s and 70s, it was held that individuals are rational decision makers who have stable preferences and values, meaning people know their own preferences and that those preferences pretty much always stay the same. And this made things very convenient, theoretically. After all, in order to predict people's behavior, we need to assume people actually know their own values and preferences. But this random utility model posed a challenge to this kind of thinking that psychologists, economists, and philosophers continue to grapple with. What the random utility model states is this: as a default, we don't actually know our own preferences. We don't actually know our own values. And because we aren't born with our preferences and desires already known to us, what do? We copy others. We see others drinking, having sex, buying things they don't need, making money their god, and seeking status and superiority, and so we unconsciously adopt those values and think they're ours. We even get to the point that we convince ourselves we enjoy these things, even if we don't. Kind of like realizing you only like avocado toast because everyone on Instagram is posting it. This is what mimetic desire is. Once I started to have money, I started to think I enjoyed drinking more and eating more. I started to think I enjoyed having better clothing. I started to think I enjoyed going to parties or sitting on beaches, and that's why I always felt empty afterwards. And it might be the reason you feel empty too. You see, although I had convinced my brain I actually enjoyed these things, it was impossible to convince my heart. Why did I enjoy these things? Simply put, because I thought that's what I was supposed to enjoy. Although things like food, scrolling on our phones, shopping, and vacations aren't drugs, our experiences of many of these types of everyday events can act in a similar way to drugs. Our perception of how much we're addicted to these experiences, how we anticipate them, and the instant hit we feel has now been found to have strong links to our beliefs about how addictive we think they are. In fact, a recent study reinforces this idea. In this study, the researchers concluded a person's belief about drugs can influence their brain activity and behavior similarly to pharmacological effects. In other words, what we experience as pleasurable is often not within the experience itself. The pleasure is in our perception, and our perception is something we can change. That's why books such as Atomic Habits, which I love and have gotten so much benefit from, still don't get to the heart of the issue when it comes to habit change. In this well-known book, James Clear discusses how important identity change is for the formation of long-term habits. For example, becoming a reader is more important than getting in the habit of reading, and becoming a fit person is more important than developing the habit of exercising. But how exactly do we form that new identity? It's not enough to manipulate or brainwash ourselves into thinking, for example, that raw broccoli tastes good or that drinking wine doesn't give you that pleasant, buzzed feeling. Instead, it's about asking one simple question: and then what? This question forces us to ask ourselves more than simply what makes us happy. Instead, it's more of a question about what gives us fulfillment. What do you think the difference is between these two? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. You see, decades of research have shown that the happy hormone, dopamine, spikes the highest in anticipation of a reward, just before we get that reward, not when we actually get the reward. Just reflect on your own experience. I'm sure you've really wanted to eat pizza or some other delicious food before and you just kept thinking about it and looking forward to it. The thought of the pizza or that vacation you were looking forward to, or simply the weekend you were looking forward to after a hard week at work, all became bigger and more amazing in your mind than they actually were in reality. And then only after you ate that pizza or came back from that vacation or Sunday evening rolled around did you realize it's over. What now? You see, your own biology plays a trick on you. It's not actually that pizza you want. It's the idea of pizza you've created that you want. It's not actually that vacation you want. It's the idea of that vacation that you want. And it's not the weekend you want. It's the idea of it you've created in your mind that you want. So then what do I mean by asking the simple question, and then what? And how does this take us out of this vicious cycle? Well, I started to realize the same thing about myself at some point. I would go on vacation or eat a meal or even spend time with friends anticipating those things only to afterward feel disappointment that it was over or feel it didn't produce the happiness in me I imagined it would. My habit of exercise that I had developed by following Atomic Habits lasted for a year and then started to fall off again. I started to get into bad eating habits again until I realized that the only way I was going to sustain better habits and experience true enjoyment of my life is if I abandoned the idea of happiness altogether and instead sought fulfillment. Again, this was an idea I had published on 10 years prior, and only now was I realizing what my own words meant. You see, whenever I'm about to do something such as travel on a vacation or eat a good meal or even just have a casual beer, I now ask myself, and then what? Okay, so I'm getting dopamine hits because I have an idea in my mind that I anticipate getting from it. But can I clarify that idea? What am I really anticipating? Once I do that thing, what will be the end result? And is it really something worth anticipating? When we ask ourselves these questions, we force ourselves to clarify to ourselves what we really want, not what we've simply accepted we want. Am I traveling and going to sit on a beach because that's the thing I'm supposed to do and enjoy on vacation? Or am I traveling because I want to learn about the people, culture, and cuisine of that place? Or because my knowledge will be enriched in some way? For me, that's what I've realized I value from traveling. Not simply the relaxation or simply getting away part. We have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the result I'm looking for from this experience? Am I drinking a few beers because I need to relax or because I feel I deserve it after a long day of working so hard? And if so, then what? Am I going to feel that buzz forever or is it temporary? Am I going to feel hungover or fatigued because of it? Do I really enjoy it or did I simply convince myself I do? In other words, we need to train our minds not to focus on the reward state when we have a craving or urge to do something, but instead to think broader than that. Think past that. Instead of anticipating what it's going to be like when I drink that beer, or what it's going to be like when I hook up, or what it's going to be like when I go on that trip, focus on the step that comes right after it. Train your mind to focus on the after effect or after state, not the dopamine hit, not the reward. I've come to understand about myself that happiness is not what I'm looking for. Happiness is fleeting. Happiness will, interestingly, make you miserable. Things and even people will, over time, fade away. Experiences we have will fade away. So if we keep focusing on the reward or the high that we're anticipating, we'll always be let down because that state is always fleeting. But if the solution is fulfillment, then what is it and how do we find it? Well, the key lies within that after state. When we ask that question, and then what, really focus on that after state. What is that? Is the after state exactly how you feel now? Or did you gain something in addition to simply the dopamine hit or reward feeling? If we can be honest with ourselves, we have to admit the answer is, I'll feel exactly how I do now. So if the after state is exactly how you feel now, then speaking about my own habits now, what really is the point of having that beer in the evening while watching Netflix? What really is the point of eating that chocolate chip muffin, scrolling through TikTok for that extra hour, or even going on that trip to just get away? In fact, much of the time, we don't even end up in the same place. We end up in a worse place. That beer makes you feel more tired the next morning. Scrolling through TikTok makes you feel more guilty. Coming back from that vacation just makes you feel more depressed about getting back to your job. So truly, what's the point? Well, you've probably heard a ton of gurus tell you have to identify your core values, and that's true. But how do we really do that? The truth is, identifying what we truly want in life and what our core values are in life won't be achieved by just sitting down and reflecting on those things. It takes actual experience. Being willing to try things we think we won't like, that we're uncomfortable with, that we think we won't be a fit for to succeed at. In that way, it doesn't mean we shouldn't travel to new places, have good tasting food, or even drink socially with friends. Instead, I've identified 3 concrete answers to the question, and then what, that determine whether I should do something I have a craving to do. And those are, number 1, and then I will have learned something new. I've realized that I don't actually enjoy things like parties and even just relaxing on vacation, at least in themselves. However, if I can identify the outcome of the party, for example, as I might make some new friends and learn from my conversations with them, or the outcome of the vacation as I'll learn about new cuisines, cultures, or ways of living, then the actual dopamine hit I might get is just an afterthought. It's almost irrelevant. Number 2 is, and then I will have engaged in self-care. If I can identify that an outcome has the potential to recharge me in some way, even if that is an occasional drink or some junk food, having a nap, or even scrolling through TikTok, then yeah, I'll do it. Why? Because if those things ultimately lead to what I mentioned in number 1, learning something new, then in my mind, I've already set up that outcome as more important than the temporary feeling of the dopamine hit that I'll get. Or it might even help me achieve number 3 of these 3 answers to, and then what? Which is, and then I will have made a contribution. Contribution is one of the most important things we can do in life. Think about it. I'll be gone someday. You'll be gone someday. But what will live on? Why will your life ultimately matter or not? It will depend greatly on what kind of impact you made on someone else's life, or even the life of animals or other living things. We will all eventually go back to our original state, which was a clump of organic molecules. What will be the difference for you between that beginning state and that end state? You see, if we focus on any one of these 3 end states and continuously determine whether our habits and daily activities are aligned with them, we won't necessarily experience more pleasure or happiness, but we will experience incredible fulfillment in life. If you can find no answer to the question, and then what, and pursue those activities anyway, you'll only continue to feel lost. The philosopher Epicurus once said, "To eat and drink without a friend is to devour like the lion and the wolf." Our experience of the simplest meal, like our experience of anything, can be entirely more rewarding of an experience than eating a 5-course gourmet meal miserably by ourselves if it's done with those we love and share those end states with. You see, happiness itself is undesirable. Happiness itself is an illusion. If there existed a pill you could take that would put you in a sleep-like trance but give you the most intense feeling of happiness forever and take away all your pain, you likely wouldn't take it, would you? But why? Because we value pursuing difficult goals. We value loving relationships. We value personal growth. And all of those things, all of life, requires embracing pain. When we try to avoid pain, it creates pain. When we try to get a cheap dopamine hit, we feel the pain of not having it afterwards. When we do something productive towards our goals, it creates 5 more problems to solve, which creates pain. So it's not about eliminating pain. Instead, it's about choosing the pain that makes our lives worth living. There's an ancient Greek myth about a king named Tantalus, who was favored by the gods and given the rare privilege to dine with them. Tantalus was a man blessed with wealth, power, and the trust of the gods. Yet despite his fortunes, he was perpetually dissatisfied, always yearning for more, convinced that true happiness lay just beyond his grasp. One day, driven by a desire to test the gods' power and to elevate his own status, Tantalus committed a terrible act. The gods were appalled by Tantalus's arrogance and decided to punish him. They placed him in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree in the underworld. Each time Tantalus reached for the fruit, the branches would move away from him. And when he bent down to drink the water, it would rush away from his hand so he couldn't get a single sip. He was left in eternal hunger and thirst, always seeing what he desired right in front of his face, but never able to attain it. In our own story, it isn't the gods who punish us, but instead, it is we who punish ourselves. The sooner we stop chasing desire for its own sake and instead embrace the fears, imperfections, and uncertainties of life, the sooner we'll be truly free.